Every Monday on this station from 6 to 7 p.m., nutrition security is a major global challenge. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we must learn to feed ourselves, providing the right nutrition from the food we grow. Manna comes from heaven, but food comes from the earth of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Farmers feed us with nutritious local food. Become a farmer today or get to know one really well. Your present and future health depends on it. Learn the facts about agriculture and the crucial importance of farming. Agriculture off the grid. I'm Chester Connell. Join me and my guests every Monday on this station from 6 to 7 p.m. Agriculture off the grid.
Good evening to you, wherever you are in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, this blessed country of ours, despite all the things that are happening. How did you have your day? How did you spend your day? Did it go positively? Did it go well? I certainly hope so. This is the land of the blessed. Let's start doing all the things that we need to do to make it even more so. My name is Chester Connell, and this is Agriculture Off the Grid. This evening, a very special guest. I always say that, don't I? The guests just keep getting more and more special. And when they come back a second time, they're even more so. The wonderful information, the evolutionary information that we share on Agriculture Off the Grid. Every Monday on this station. This evening, Anesia Baptiste. She is finally here, the lady herself. And I hope when she becomes Prime Minister, she's going to be at my interviews before we get on the air. I'm only joking. So it's good to know that you're here. I'm sure that you didn't have sirens wailing like as you would be when you become Prime Minister one of these days. But it's good to know that you're here. So Anesia Baptiste is our guest. We're going to be talking about GMOs and, of course, her party's view on agriculture, which she has stated before in other avenues in the media, and we're going to be refreshing that and talking about that and seeing if we can listen to the voice of reason, the voice of leadership, the voice of one of our prominent leaders here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines as we discuss the GMO, the genetic modified organism situation, the issue here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and challenging the biotech bully. The biotech bully, of course, is Monsanto. Get used to that name and do all you can to find out all you can about this company. Millions of people are fighting against Monsanto, and there's actually the Millions Against Monsanto campaign started by the Organic Consumer Association in the mid-1990s to fight back against this biotech bully of the infamous chemical company Monsanto, the quintessence of evil, I call them, responsible for Agent Orange, PCBs, GMOs, environmental disasters, and so much more. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Anesia Baptiste, good evening, and how are you?
Good evening, Chester, and thank you very much for having me on your program, Agriculture Off the Grid, is it? Yes?
It is indeed.
And good evening to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and all those who are listening to our voices here.
Good. Glad that you could make it. And it is Agriculture Off the Grid, G-R-I-D. I probably have to explain on every program again, repetition, because people meet me in town and say, yes, man, I like your program, Agriculture Off the Grill. And it is nothing about grilling. As a matter of fact, I am moving away from the meats, and I'm pushing vegetables, growing our own vegetables. But yes, Agriculture Off the Grid, as we move away from the grid. The grid, of course, G-R-I-D, representing energy driven by fossil fuels, all the lines, the Vinlec lines, which I think should be buried so that you don't see any Vinlec lines. And of course, we're moving to solar and so on and so on and so on. But it's a process, and that process calls for education, and which is exactly why you are here this evening.
That's right.
Now, before we actually get into agriculture, I didn't tell you that I was going to talk about this, and if you don't want to talk about it, you certainly don't have to. But in terms of your party, you are the leader of the newest political party in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I believe you came after the Green Party.
That's correct.
You launched the DRP when?
I announced the DRP in a press conference on the 23rd of August of 2012.
2012, yes. So going for 3 years.
That's right.
And at this point, will the citizenry of St. Vincent and the Grenadines be seeing the DRP at the level of the elections?
Yes, it is our aim to field a slate of candidates for the next general elections whenever they are called. We know that they can be called very soon, and so we are working feverishly to have a slate of candidates to present to Vincentians as an alternative to what we currently have.
Apparently the ULP is doing the same thing, working feverishly to get their candidates as well.
Yes.
All right, that's good. I have to ask Mr. Ivan O'Neill if he will be fielding a slate. I believe he said he would be, actually. So we're going to have some very interesting times ahead for us politically, and we're all looking forward to, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing you, and that's one of the reasons you're here. I'm also inviting Mr. Ivan O'Neill to come on the program as well, and every member, a member from the NDP and the ULP as well, or at least from the government, the Ministry of Agriculture. So good. So you will be, your party will be here. Now let's go right into your party's take on agriculture, which I said you've talked about before. What is the DRP's take on agriculture generally? What is your position?
Okay, well, generally speaking, when it comes to agriculture, and I have in my hand here a flyer that we have created. I first presented this in October 2013 when I traveled to New York and held our first town hall meeting with Vincentians in the diaspora there in New York. And this trifold flyer gives some basic points about the DRP and some policy points of the DRP in different areas, whether it be health, agriculture, foreign affairs, etc. It's not exhaustive, by no means exhaustive. However, on the agricultural plan, and I want to first establish something, the Democratic Republican Party, our whole outlook in terms of development and serving the country is based upon our duty to protect the inalienable or God-given rights and freedoms of all people. So whatever the sphere of development and human relations, we look at development from the point of we as government or government to be have a duty to protect God-given rights and freedoms. And therefore our policy positions are based on that understanding and are set with the direct aim of ensuring that whatever the policy and whatever the actions taken, they must all redound to the benefit of protecting persons' rights and freedoms. In the case of health, for example, it would directly relate to our duty to protect the right to life. In the case of agriculture, similarly, it affects right to life and also the right to private property. Because when we talk about agriculture, we talk about our food, which is very basic to private property. I make reference to the Bible where God said that man by the sweat of his brow he shall eat bread. And when you think of bread, it is a symbol of as close as you can get to private property, your bread that you work for and you put in your mouth. It is as private a property as you can get. So when we talk about agriculture policy, first of all, I want you to understand that what is at the forefront of the DRP leader and team's mind when we think of agriculture policy for St. Vincent and the Grenadines is our need to ensure that the people's right to life and the personal right to private property are protected. Generally speaking, we feel St. Vincent and the Grenadines has great potential where agricultural development is concerned, not only for export and for money making, but also for the ensuring of our food security. We must be able to feed our people and to sustain this ability to feed our people. And so some of the things I would have mentioned in this flyer pertain to the issue of maximizing the use of our local fruits and vegetables for personal use as well as for export. I give a few examples. For example, we have a number of fruits wasting every year. Every time they're in season, they fall by the roadside, they waste. You know, there's wastage. We could be using these things and creating products from them, whether it be juices, jams, jellies, dried fruits, things like fruit flavored water. We could be going into some of these areas and encouraging persons to go into some of these areas where we can find markets to sell our produce, and also just to make better use of these foods, because we see them as drugs and medicine for our bodies as well. We see our local fruits and vegetables that we grow here as natural drugs and medicine for our people's health, for prevention, for cure, as well as for just the general sustenance of good health. And therefore we would want to be encouraging greater use of these local resources and maximizing their use by looking at how we can add value and develop products from them which we can use for export. You know, I traveled to the US recently, and in many places I entered, I saw so many products, different cosmetic products and so on. When I would examine the ingredients, I would see basic things that we have in abundance here. For example, coconut. And I would also see things like charcoal. And it gets me thinking, and it gets me concerned that we may not have gold, or so we don't know. We may not have silver, but we do have natural resources and potential to grow and sustain the growth of these resources, which can be used, you know, applying the right technology and so on, to develop products that have great value out there and for which we can find market. And certainly the point we're here to discuss, this is a big part of our policy, the issue of pursuing non-chemical and non-GMO growing of fruits and vegetables for local consumption as well as for EU and other markets.
Indeed, a mouthful, but of course you are accustomed to doing that. Lots of information. All right, well, let's go on to the GMO. It's 15 minutes after 6, so we've only got 3/4 of the program left.
Right.
So let's get a bite into that.
Yes.
Which may not be the correct expression, because we don't want to bite into GMO foods.
Right.
What is your understanding of the situation currently in St. Vincent and the Grenadines with GMO?
Okay, beautiful question. My understanding of the situation currently, Chester, is that our country is currently on the road to passing legislation, something called the National Biosafety Act, or the Biosafety Act of 2007. Apparently that's when it was first mandated, and we're on the brink of passing such legislation. You may say, what is Biosafety Act? What is that about? Not very many people know that in about 2003 we ratified a convention, a protocol called the Cartagena Protocol. It is from Colombia. That's where it was done, signed. A protocol to implement biosafety legislation and provisions for the handling, they say, the safe transfer, the handling and use of genetically modified organisms. And this protocol directs us to establish a biosafety board to regulate those things, the transfer and handling of GMOs, and to implement the protocol itself on biosafety. Now, in the process of carrying out the demands of this protocol, which we signed, St. Vincent and the Grenadines recently engaged in consultations within the public. There were officials from, I believe, the Ministry of Health and a particular lawyer who's working on the draft bill, meeting with members of the public in a few areas around in the month of February, in particular, end of February. I learned of these consultations while I was in Grenada. I was visiting for some work there, and I saw some photographs of the kind of attendance or lack thereof that were at these consultations, and I know of groups and individuals who have raised concerns about the democratic or undemocratic nature of the process, and also, of course, about the issue itself as to whether or not we really want GMOs to come here, furthermore talking about handling them and ensuring they are transferred safely. And so where we are now, to answer your question, and I don't think many people know this, is that our country has signed a protocol to agree to allow for the transfer and the handling of genetically modified organisms within our country. That would include seeds that have been genetically engineered, as well as produce that have been affected by genetically modified organisms. And our people I don't think very many of them are aware of the fact that we're on the brink of passing legislation to agree to this.
Now, my understanding of it, thank you very much for that succinct answer. I have had on the program, on this program, Dr. Lynch, who is the chair of the board.
Yes.
And my impression from him is that he is not overly concerned because, of course, and I'm going to have him back here as well. But the impression I got was that, you know, we should not be overly concerned about GMOs because they're not the franking foods that we think they are, and that there's a good side to GMO, and that you know, if we can grow a tree that is, you know, 10 feet tall, and it can have on a breadfruit and a cassava and a mango, and you can get 10 fruit on one tree, sort of thing. And this is good for food security, which is what the challenge we're trying to meet. Is GMO something that we need to be extremely concerned about?
Certainly. GMOs, genetically modified organisms, are things that we need to be extremely concerned about because they are very dangerous, not only to human health, to animal health, to the agricultural environment, in terms of the way these seeds destroy the very land in which they are planted, and these things have been proven. I want to cite something. In 2013, Monsanto, the main corporation which is responsible for GMOs, they were, unfortunately, I would say, declared winners of the World Food Prize 2013. And we are told that there was a joint statement of 81 members of the World Future Council, who condemned the selection of Monsanto as World Food Prize winners 2013. In a part of their statement, they said this, and I want you to consider the danger, and I quote, "GMO seeds continue their dependency on purchased seed and chemical inputs. The most dramatic impact of such dependency is in India, where 270,000 farmers, many trapped in debt for buying seeds and chemicals, committed suicide between 1995 and 2012. End of quote. Did you hear that? This is a statement. This has been ratified by news agencies who have reported on the impact that the kind of destruction of the agricultural system of India has caused, that has been caused by GMOs and GM seeds over the years, the kind of destruction of the people's lives, the farmers' lives, because they've become so frustrated that they have actually taken their lives. This is a serious matter. And when people like Dr. Lynch and others try to tell us that we have nothing to be worried about, this is absolutely not true. In the same 2013, there was a massive global march against Monsanto, including 400 cities worldwide in 57 different countries. You mean to tell me 400 cities worldwide and 57 different countries, including many countries who have banned GMOs, don't understand how dangerous they are? I think not. Dr. Lynch and others need to do their research and stop spewing those kind of untruths, because people have died as a result of the dangers of GMOs. And
I think and you can tell me if you agree or not on how you look at it, but the three things we need are education, education, education. Agreed
100%.
The situation in the United States. The United States are the largest exporters of GMO, and within the United States, within the 50 United States, there are many, many millions of Americans who are fighting this very company that originates in the U.S.
Absolutely correct.
As I said, the Millions Against Monsanto campaign started in the 90s, is continuing, and this information must be understood. For nearly 2 decades, Monsanto and the corporate agribusiness, and that is another aspect of it. This is a multi-billion-dollar business.
That's right.
And again, we look at the history where, coming out of World War II, all these chemicals that were being used to destroy the enemy, the World War came to an end, they had to find exactly Agent Orange produced by the same Monsanto.
That's right.
Let's find something. How can we make money? Because the war is over, we can't make any more money from that industry. So let's find a way. And this is how pesticides got into our system, to which we have become addicted as consumers.
Yes.
We do not grow a plant, generally farmers, unless it has in some chemicals, some pesticide. So now added to that is the whole GMO, genetically modified organism scenario.
Because indeed, the very persons who developed and sell the pesticides are the same persons who have genetically engineered the seeds, so they make them dependent on the pesticides, and they're making a lot of money. People have to buy these pesticides to continue once they're using these seeds. I just want to point out something. There's also, just to show you how current the concern is about GMOs, we had that global march in 2013. There's one coming up just the end of this month. March 23rd, 2015 has been declared the next date for the next global march against Monsanto. And people need to understand, thousands of people have marched in the streets around several countries of the world and hundreds of cities against this company and what it is doing. So much so that we have a list of countries who have either banned it completely, required through legislation labeling of GMOs so that people have a choice, consumers have a choice, or banned the importation of their seeds. And I'm going to list some of them: Germany, Ireland, Austria, Greece, Hungary, Luxembourg, a lot of the EU countries, Bulgaria, Madeira, Switzerland, Japan, certain states in the USA, as you have said, Australia, New Zealand, India, Thailand, just to name a few, have actually banned GMOs in one form or the other. So let none think we are just making up stories. These are real life facts that people are fighting against around the world.
And again, I urge listeners to find out the information for yourselves as well, and understand what is going on. Just about 3 weeks ago, the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture in the United States, as I said, the U.S. Secretary, Tom Vilsack, floated the idea of consumers using barcodes to identify foods that contain genetically modified organisms as an alternative to requiring food manufacturers to put a label on products that contain GMOs. Now, this is significant because if you put on a barcode and you don't actually label it GMO, the consumer is more likely to pick it up because nobody reads barcodes. You can't read a barcode. You have to scan a barcode.
Yes, yes.
As opposed to, this is a GMO product in English. Do you know if at this point, given what you said earlier, that we have given access to what? We have signed on to the...
We signed the protocol, and we are looking to pass the bill into law, the Biosafety Act.
Now,
or bill.
Does that include, because the onus is on us as St. Vincent and the Grenadines to tell GMO exporters that they must put labels on their foods. So we have not yet done that.
No, we haven't. We have not.
Right. So GMO products are still coming into St. Vincent and the Grenadines at the moment.
That's correct.
We are consuming GMO products.
I even question whether or not we are already planting GM seeds, because I have the DRP has engaged in the kind of education you're talking about, and we have a particular program. It's on our YouTube site, and it's called DRP Agricultural Plan. And in this program, we identify, we aired it to the public several times, and I got feedback from farmers who shared their stories about how they noticed when they planted certain tomato seeds, for example. After the first crop, when they try to plant back the seeds from that first crop, they don't yield. And that is one of the things that happens when you know that your seeds have been engineered, because it is meant to keep you coming back to buy the seeds. You understand?
Absolutely.
So it makes me question whether or not we really already have them here, and there's some sort of rush suddenly. I ask myself why, to sort of regulate things, because we're actually probably already transferring and handling them, and there's a rush to sort of cover things by regulating it with law.
Absolutely. And we must be aware too that when you purchase GMO products and you eat GMO products and you pass them out, or you just buy GMO seeds and you plant them, already a restructuring of our own fertile soil will take place, because we're looking at chemicals. So when you see in the newspapers, oh, this farmer has reaped a 10-foot long yam, or 50 tomatoes on a tree, that is suspect right away.
Or certain strange look on animals.
Yes, exactly.
Like a tumorish looking kind of thing, or two heads or something like that. These are some of the things that were proven when testing were done on animals like rats and pigs, giving them GMO foods to eat. And we saw where they developed certain strange tumors and cancers, because that is one of the things that the herbicides that are sprayed on these plants, as well as the very gene injected or spliced into the seed, causes it. I mean, they're literally made with like a terminator in them to kill pests, okay, to make them more resistant to pests. So they're made with something in them. These genetically modified or engineered seeds are made with like a terminator in them to kill pests. So imagine when you eat the crop that bears from that seed, it will do you damage, it will kill your cells. And this is why we have a lot of reports coming out saying it's bad for, it's causing lymphoma, it's associated with cancers and gastrointestinal problems and all sorts of problems to the kidneys and different things. And we don't even recognize the burden on our health, because we haven't made the link, because usually we're not talking about and studying these things.
Indeed. And it's to my mind, I like to simplify things.
Yes.
And the history of this, of course, I suppose we can say started with the discovery